understanding the concept. So, moral thinker and philosopher and their real life application in a modern society context for administration application. Importance of principle. So, revelation model context teaching of Buddha, saying of Sant and reformers, and Plato, theory of justice. These are important in our daily life. So, ethics. Why? Like Sadachar. So, the core idea is moral act by virtuous person and character over action. Then comes the example. So the Krishna action in Mahabharata and Ram killings of Bali and heroes in moving doing violence, but they are virtuous. Then type of virtues. So moral virtues are kindness, benevolence, compassion, honesty, consciousness, kartavanishta, and gratitude, kritagita. Then comes the non-moral virtues, the patience, calmness, perseverance, humaneness, and context dependent. And then comes the passion versus reason. So the core conflict is ethical decision making, and balance is required in the passion and reason. Then comes the component. So components, the passion is the junoon, bhavanaएं or इच्छाएं, and reason is tark, logic, and vivek. Then comes the analogy. So this is the dham of dham ya bandh, water equal to passion. If we seen a dam, then the water is the passion and the gate are the reason or the intellect directing water. Then comes the emotional intelligence. So it is the balance of emotion and intellect, and essential for civil service. And qualities from the patients are compassion, empathy, sympathy, forgiveness, and kindness. Then comes the qualities from reason. So equity, rule of law, fortitude, prudence, uh, discipline, the scientific approach, and restraint, the sayam. Then comes the example. So example are Amistos PM IS. So he is built 100 km road in Manipur, used passion, crowdfunding, required sympathy and empathy. Then comes the uh, major moral thinker. So Sukrat. So Sukrat is around 450 BC, and context is Greece, and there are wars and democracy and versus oligarchy. He anti democratic views, and he supported Sparta. Key principles are the knowledge is virtue, ignorance is vice, and I know one thing that I know nothing, and knowledge is unity of virtues. And application. So national education policy 2020 as holistic education for knowledge virtue, and knowledge is of conduct rule as all India service and state service. So become virtuous and understanding society and economy. Then comes the concept of good life. So self-control, atmanirgar, detachment, vairagya, sahaj, and no abstain but no distraction, and higher goals, welfare and moksha and nirvana, and use government machinery without forgetting the purpose. Then comes the concept of citizenship. So power of independence, independent reasoning, agreement and judgment. An example, Article 19 Consumer Protection Act. Then comes the criticism of this so, knowledge alone is not sufficient. Corruption despite of ethics training. and ignoring the role of passion and emotion. So this was the Socrates. Then comes the Plato. So Plato is the student of Socrates, and theory of soul is given by him. So he emphasis on rational, the vivek, and spirit, the bhavanatmak, and appetite, the abhilashi. Then comes the cardinal virtues. So cardinal virtues are four: wisdom, vivek, virtue of reason; courage, virtue of spirit; temperance, courage of appetite; and justice, harmony of the three. Then come the application of virtues. So application of virtues are wisdom for policy making and understanding; courage for decision making and taking a stand; temperance for respect, honesty, and anti-corruption; and justice for impartiality and emotional intelligence. Then comes the theory of good. Uh, आयचाई का सिद्धांत. So virtual life equal to good life, intelligent study and rational actions, pure aesthetic pleasure, saundarya suk, and formula reason, truth, spiritual intelligence plus aesthetic pleasure. Then comes the virtue is teachable. So the morality learned through education, not innate. An example is skill development and moral education. Then comes the criticism. So criticism is limited number of virtue, more than four: ideal state, utopia, impractical, and against the democracy or oligarchy, and censorship, against freedom of expression. Then comes the Aristotle, the Aristo. So he is the student of Plato and teacher of Alexander, and the principle of summum bonum means highest good. So happiness, suk is the end, and from intellectual person and complete contemplation, and acceptance of common happiness, source, friendship, family, and comfort. Then comes the application of administration. So service delivery and welfare attitude, going beyond call of duty, self satisfaction, conscience, and good sleep. And example are officer adopting orphan in COVID. Then comes the importance of self-control. So knowledge is all insufficient, need discipline. And a virtuous person can face unhappy circumstances. Example, Khemkaji, Ramayana, Mahabharata. And fitness for delivering justice is needed. An example of corruption officer despite of knowledge. And theory of justice, the state level. So distributive justice, distribution of resource and opportunities; corrective justice, regardless law, redressing wrongs and punishment. An example, paper leak law and PESCO act. Then comes the golden means, the swarnim madhya. So the virtue as intermediate between extremes, vices, required self-control or sayam. Example is the courage between cardiac and foolishness; humanity between servitude and rudeness; ambition between greed and lack of aspiration; generosity between extinction and extrovertness; and political neutrality between bias and indifference; and empathy between indifference and neural breakdown. Then comes the context development is needed. So the importance of end. So as important as mean the means. So as important as the mean, balance between individual and state importance, and state exit for good of citizen, not vice versa. So, no harassment of citizen there. So freedom of will by Aristo. Criticize Socrates for ignoring the freedom of will. Knowledge doesn't guarantee the right action. Example, Article 19, 25 to 18 are not absolute. An administrator must ensure other rights and not violated. Then comes the rhetoric or engagement. So logos, logic, reason, and fact; pathos, emotion and feeling, ethos, credibility and character. Then comes the uh, ethical theories. So, teleological theories or the consecutism. So, focus on outcome and consequence type. The ethical egoism, self-interest, altruism, others' interest, utilitarianism, greatest good for greatest number. Then comes this the utilitarianism means the it are three type: the hedonistic utilitarianism, act utilitarianism, and rule utilitarianism. So hedonistic utilitarianism, pleasure as ultimate goal, quantitative as by Jeremy Bentham. So greatest happiness principle, seven dimension of pleasure, intensity and duration, etc. And application PDS, SBM and Ujjwala Yojana. Criticism, immoral act for greater good. So then comes the qualitative. So by John Stuart Mill, the qualitative this utilitarianism. So intellectual pleasure higher than sensual, and higher versus lower pleasure there, and application in education, art and social welfare. Then comes this act tutorism. So act tutorism focus on individual act and consequence, and traditional notion right can be violated. Then comes this rule utilitarianism, means the focus on rule maximizing utility, and consider justice and individual right, link between consecutism and deontology. Then comes this uh, deontology, duty based ethics. So teleology is target based or the end based, and deontology on duty based action. It is itself determines the morality, not the outcome. So duty is primarily example balikavad by TN session, balikavad or TN session. Then comes the proponent. So Balikavat is action is itself is a non immoral, and tension done the moral in election. Then comes the Emmanuel Kant and V.D. Ross, W.D. Ross by give the primary face duties, John Roll the fairness, Karma Yoga of Gita, and Pun Mimamsa of Vedic period. Then this is the what is the Emmanuel Kant says. So Human Kant was father of deontology and give the principle of categorical imperative and duty for duty's sake. So what is the categorical imperative? So it is universality, humanity as end, not mean, and autonomy or freedom. So what is universality? So act only according to maximum, that should become universal law. So test of universality, lying or stealing is not universal. Then personal sentiment are irrelevant. An example: don't steal, don't kill. And then comes the humanity as end, not the mean. So treat humanity as ultimate goal. Support human right ideas, and example NHRC Article 17 UN Charter and welfare schemes. Then comes the autonomy, the freedom. So the moral rule are role from free and rational will, no coercion, and theory of entitlement by Amartya Sen, and accountability required, free will, and suicide as moral wrong, violation of humanity as the end. Then comes the this duty for duty sake concept. So it is intrinsic moral motivation regardless of praise and punishment, and example is Ashok Khemka. So by John Roll. So John Roll give the theory of justice or social justice, two principles of justice. So the first is equal basic liberties. These are political liberty, freedom of speech. An example: Article 14, 15, 19, 11, 21, and 25, and at 28. Then comes the social and economic inequalities. The assertable the benefit the least advantage or difference principle attached to position open to all. for fair, equity, and opportunity. Example: reservation and ST disabled. Then comes this theory of justice and veil of ignorance. So, veil of ignorance is a decision maker unaware of their social standing and ensure impartiality. An example: DM of Gopalganj provide widows meal. And then comes this uh, evolutionary ethics. So what is the evolutionary ethics? So survival of fittest is the moral principle, and morality evolve with human and social development. And example, capitalism and communism trends toward absolute morality, individual and social interest aligning, and administrative personal growth in social interest. Ethics adapt to changing time by environment, bio, and digital ethics. Future ethics will be stronger and repeal absolute laws. An impact of evolutionary past is the development both good and bad values, love and anger, and need to support bad moral, temperance, and reason. So then the being ahead of time may not be accepted. Example: Gandhian and Muhammad bin Tuglam. So then comes the other more thinker. So these are the G. E. Murray, W. D. Ross, and Jean Paul Sartre. And then comes the naturalistic fallacy by G. E. Murray. So he cannot define good in naturalistic terms. Is does not imply oath. Criticism of defining morality based on nature. An example is thieves morality but misinterpretation. Then comes the this the